Welcome back from winter break. I don't know about you, but I always feel like it's like a full 5 degrees chillier inside the chapel. And on warm days, it's always hotter, right? I'm excited about our chapel speaker today. Our chapel speaker is Emily Berg. She will be introduced by Dr. Farkey, and her readers are Jackie, Priscilla, and Taya, and we will not have a hymn.
My first real recollection of Emily Berg, aka Elmo, is in a little Zoom window. For those of you who weren't here, during the year of Zoom school, we all improvised and pitched in as best we could to create social touch points in a campus of students spread across the entire globe. Of course, I hosted a Zoom movie night as a weekend activity. True to stereotype, the movie was Jurassic Park, and true to Zoom school year, Emily Berg was one of about 2 people who showed up. I don't remember much, and I quite frankly have tried to forget that year as completely as possible, but I do remember that Emily did show up. And that pattern of showing up is a big part of her character. In life, just showing up is often all it takes to stand out. Emily is someone who constantly impresses me by showing up, even when it might be hard, or she might be stressed, or when it might be something just a little bit outside of her comfort zone. More than just showing up, though, Emily brings her best. Emily has shown up and brought her best during her years at Webb. Her intellectual and personal trajectory is nothing short of exponential. The not-so-confident 10th grader who stressed and procrastinated over a basic writing assignment has grown in confidence and ability by leaps and bounds. Emily has become a genuine world expert on the fossil sharks of the Frontier Formation in Wyoming, including fossils that she found on summer peccary trips. Ask her to expound on the differences between Telodontaspis and Eostriata and you'll probably learn more than is truly healthy to know about those sharks. So, it's sometimes hard to believe that the Emily Berg who was on that Zoom screen several years ago became the Emily Berg who presented in front of a room full of professional paleontologists at a conference last spring. Although Emily has that theatrical background and certainly has performed for an audience and is no intellectual lightweight, I also know that being in front of that audience was pretty intimidating for her. Even so, Emily showed up, she stepped up, and she wowed a bunch of paleontologists. And I certainly know that she wowed me and Dr. Belisi. Emily has shown up again and again across campus, in the dorms, in the theater, in the pool. Although Emily certainly might describe herself as a little bit antisocial, you'd sometimes never guess this from how she interacts with her fellow Webbies. Coach Belleville, in particular, noted that it's pretty obvious that Emily actually loves being part of the water polo team. And even if Emily won't really admit it, I'm also told that she can be pretty darn good in mentoring some of the younger students on that team. So from the wilds of Wyoming, to the pool deck, to the dorms, Emily shows up and she brings her best. And today, she has stepped up as our chapel speaker. Thank you, Emily, for challenging yourself, and thank you for sharing a bit of that with us today.
Most people are other people. Their thoughts are someone else's opinions, their lives and mimicry, their passions and quotation. Oscar Wilde.
I don't know how much value I have in this universe, but I do know I made a few people happier than they would be without me. As long as I know that, I am rich as I'll ever need to be. Robin Williams.
How could I possibly be expected to handle school on a day like this? Ferris from Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
As you might have guessed from that last quote, one of my favorite movies growing up was Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Many of you have probably seen it, and I know it has brought a smile to the faces of many people I've loved. But the reason I love this movie so much is because of one particular scene with a character called Cameron Fry. To an enchanting cover of a hit song by the Smiths, Cameron was led into the Art Institute of Chicago by a chain of schoolchildren and his friends on a field trip, and depicted in various frames indulgently observing famous works of art with Sloane and Ferris. However, in one particular frame, he was alone. With his back to the camera, he stood before artist George Seurat's famous painting, A Sunday Afternoon on the Grand Shop. Sorry, I don't speak French, so if I pronounce that incorrectly, I apologize. People of all social classes are scattered about the water's edge in a lush green park, enjoying their various recreational activities and the view. But one figure was looking back at Cameron. His gaze was transfixed on the face of a small child in the center of the painting. His expression stoic, his brows furrowed, but not in the pretentious kind of way. His eyes were wide with fear. The camera shot back and forth between their two faces, and as Cameron's eyes got wider, the child's face slowly became an amorphous blob of color composed of just tiny, vivid dots. The closer he looked at the child, the less he saw. Perhaps he was looking into a mirror. For a moment, Cameron experienced something so intense with seeing this painting that time passed without him even knowing it, and he was left with a single impression. I think, in many ways, my life could be depicted through a pointillist painting. That's the style of painting that George Seurat made. But unlike Seurat, I don't believe my painting could ever be something that deserves an entire wall space in a prestigious museum, independent from the careful curation of the exhibit around it. I don't wish it to be admired and viewed by hundreds of people a day. I imagine up-close, self-proclaimed art critics would squint at my painting above the rim of their square glasses, furrow their brows, and wrinkle their noses when they realize it's just a bunch of dots. A bunch of dots that have been arranged to compose layers of contrasting color and texture that could be entirely different works of art on their own, and that really don't make any sense at all, at least to nobody but me. That's what pointillism is. It's a style evolved from the Neo-Impressionist movement. And if pointillists didn't leave quite the impression in this era, that's what every work of art wants to leave behind, right? An impression. And by speaking a little bit about my experiences with some of the components of pointillism, I hope to leave you with a good one. Now, I've never painted a pointillist landscape before, but I imagine one must require an incredible amount of patience. Seriously, who has the time to sit in front of an easel of endless blank canvas and fill it with layers and layers of tiny dots? Well, apparently Seurat did. Writers at Sotheby's Art Institute theorized this was probably too technical a style for restless individual spirits such as Van Gogh, because creating these kinds of pieces doesn't just require patience and artistic talent, it also relies heavily on principles of science. As both an aspiring artist and scientist, I can appreciate the bridge that this style forges between the two practices. Careful consideration of color theory and optics is included in this process, considering how each individual dot of unmixed paint blends into a wave of vibrant hues and shades, creating stunning visual effects from the naked eye's perspective. An unforgettable impression. So with all this in mind, how does one create their own pointillist painting? How does one go about being intentional with the life they create with the time they are given? I believe a man named George, a fictionalized caricature of the artist Seurat himself in Stephen Sondheim's musical A Sunday in the Park with George, said it best in the show's opening number. Quote, "White, a blank page or canvas. The challenge, bring order to the whole, through design, composition, tension, balance, light, and harmony," end quote. Every pointillist artist creates with a vision in mind, an end result, and follows this process in their own way, incorporating each of the methods above in some way. They are scientists in that way, yet as artists they know how easily and quickly the result may differ from expectation. Design. I usually begin any art piece with a rough sketch in mind. For example, light lines, big shadows, somewhat resembling the large oak trees and old stucco buildings of the place in which I would spend the next 3 years of my life. But it doesn't take long before I stop playing and start diving into colors. Every color is like a character. They each layer a different effect and tell a different story within a painting. Different associations, different backgrounds, different feelings. For example, I imagine my mother would be indigo. She's the concentrated dark wash of the sky on a watercolor page in her summer sketchbook. My dad would be Forest Green. He's the jagged edges of an elaborate photograph collage from the Dodger Stadium in Los Angeles. My elementary and middle school friends, the few that I had, were always a goldenrod yellow. I still see their faces and hear their laughter in sunlight through the often densely polluted skies in the valley. The people from my theater company were very dark red, like the dusty velvet curtains at the many auditoriums we performed in. But when I retreated to my house after a long day, I would be glad to be rid of the loud orange color that both parties created collectively. I really don't like orange. Sure, it can be an exciting color that exudes energy and vibrance in the dullest of moments, like a sunset. But in my experience, it quickly becomes dangerous when surrounded by it for too long, like a wildfire. That fire burned too much of me, leaving only crumbled black ashes of my creative passion and ambition, and that was when I knew it was time to start over. Moving away from your hometown is really strange. Some of my best memories were formed there. Some of my worst memories were formed there. I miss the familiarity of my house with its colorful walls adorned with handmade art, antique furniture, crystals, and plants galore, and little treasures from all around the world. But I've seen so much more now that I'm gone. Web is full of different colors. Amazing people and opportunities all waiting to be grabbed a hold of by a brush and dotted into the paintings of its students. I thought a long time ago that this was exactly the kind of environment that I needed to be in, a studio in this sense, where I could create a brand new painting and fill it with a rainbow of whatever I wanted. But the wide optic spectrum of hues in this place I now call home are unpredictable and always changing. They cannot possibly be compartmentalized, and they shouldn't have to be. I quickly realized that in this new environment, once these new colors, these new people in my life started to mix and layer upon the canvas, the real challenge would begin. Composition. The visual impact of a pointillist painting is really a matter of optics and not chemistry compared to other styles of painting. It solely depends on the juxtaposition of complementary colors, which serve to enhance each other's intensity. Seurat once said, quote, "I want to make modern people, in their essential traits, move about as they do on those friezes, and place them on canvases organized by harmonies of color," end quote. That is really how a pointillist painting itself is formed, and it is also the most tedious step in George Seurat's orderly challenge. Now, while it is helpful to have thorough knowledge on things like the color wheel or psychological responses to shape and texture, no amount of preparation can decide the fate of your composition. The perfect balanced group of colors that you are looking for can only be found through trial and error. Just like the people that you surround yourself with. At Webb, I found my best friends were the places that I never thought I would look. I assumed that I would immediately be lumped in with the theater kids, and in some way I have, but considering my past experiences at home. Or only be able to bond with people who had similar backgrounds and interests. But my experience has been quite the opposite. All of my friends are well-rounded people. Some are varsity athletes, accomplished writers, incredibly talented artists, passionate advocates, dependable student leaders, or a combination of a few, or none of these things. Each of them is incredibly unique and interesting in their own ways. I try to surround myself with the characteristics and personalities that I hope to someday exhibit, and people that bring out my already best qualities. But the best thing about my friends is that beyond everything, I can trust them. I can rely on them to tell me when I have made a mistake that has affected them, and they can rely on me to do the same. I hope that in some way I have made a positive impact on each of them the way they have on me. Those are the impressions I most care about. Light. It pierces through my blinds in the morning, creating a warm haze around my bed, waking me up promptly at 7 a.m. every day, whether I like it or not. Sunlight is the best filter to view over paintings. I like to imagine the light in which an artist paints in, and the stark contrast it has to the artificial white lights installed and positioned just so over the curated gallery that I stand in front of. The painting becomes a different shade, exposed in an almost indecent manner. It's staring into the audience in front of it, like when one visits the dentist's office and stares into the light above their head, while every minor imperfection is put on display. Light impacts how people appear, their own issues, their own problems, and it makes them turn into different shades of their color every day. And some days it is easier to tell than others. Everything tends to look different on a rainy day than in the sun. Colors, textures, noise. Perhaps that is why I prefer a good rainy day. Everyone minds their own business, stays inside, and keeps a private moment or two concealed to themselves. It reminds me that we are all just trying our best. And no matter how intentional with your actions and decisions you are, how much reflection you have made on past mistakes, a splatter from a paint tube or a twitch in your wrist that makes a brush swatch can change the expected outcome of your painting. But when the great California sun eventually wakes up from its nap, I start to see people emerge from behind their windows. And suddenly I know they can become more than just a color. Their constant unpredictability makes me appreciate them just a little bit more. Balance and harmony. I haven't found these components in my painting yet. I think these qualities are desired by every artist who creates art intended to be seen, and they serve as the final stages in musical George's Pointillist Challenge. These are feelings, waiting to get back to the world through that mirror of a painting. But they're not about forcing a show. It's purely the intensity of that moment in which the viewer meets the painting, the impression. Then with a shock, they look around and they're back in the real world, no matter how much time has passed. And perhaps it's neither a pleasure nor a disappointment, but it's a brief moment of presence, of clarity. I have to wonder if Cameron Fry's experience with A Sunday on the Ramjot aligned with George Seurat's while painting it. What would he have thought if he saw Cameron in the painting at that moment? This might sound a little strange, but I believe that the things we create look back at you too. All of the Pointillism components, design, composition, tension, light, balance, and harmony, reflect back towards their audiences and the world. The balance exists in that space between the painting and the person staring at it. These are the connections you make with other people. Harmony is felt through the array of colors, reflecting light in the eye of the beholder. This is your personality shining through, a composition of everyone you've ever known and everything you have ever experienced in this life so far. Right now, I am just a small cluster of dots, a fraction of what I hope will one day become a large landscape. My experiences thus far are merely the foundation of a pointillist painting that I hope to someday finish before it gets put up on the wall, and I cannot wait to see what it will look like.
Sorry.